Hey, fifth graders, today in math class we learned how to multiply a mixed number times a whole number. Now before you go over this lesson, you want to make sure you have your whiteboard or some paper to do some problems on. Okay, we've already learned how to multiply a fraction times a fraction. We know that we multiply the numerator times the numerator and the denominator times the denominator to get our product. We've also multiplied a whole number times a fraction. And when we times a whole number times a fraction, we know that we can either just say 3 times 1 is 3, and our denominator is 4, or we can think about making our whole number into a fraction by just putting it over a 1. That means 3 divided by 1, which is still 3. And say 3 times 1 is 3, and 1 times 4 is 4, and getting 3 of the fourths. So what we worked on today is multiplying a mixed number times a whole number. For example, 3 times 1 and 1/2. Now you know that if I have 3 groups with 1 and 1/2 in each one, you could think of that as like 1/2 plus 1/2 plus 1 and 1/2, which you know is going to equal 3 wholes, and then a half plus a half plus a half, that's going to be 3 halves. So that is 3 and 3 halves. 3 halves is the same as 1 and 1/2. Add 3 with that and we get 4 1/2 for our answer. All right, so that's one way we could come up with that answer. But the other way, we're going to do it like an area model, in the same way that you would use multiplication of two whole numbers. Remember when we did multiplication of whole numbers, we used the area model when we were multiplying something like 22 times 35. And when we used that area model, we drew a rectangle, and then we expanded our first number into 20 plus 2 into the tens and ones, and divided our box in half, and then we took 35 and we expanded that into tens and ones. And then we used mental math to multiply our numbers. We said 30 times 20 is the same as, well, 3 times 2 is 6, and annex our 2 zeros, we got 600. And then we multiplied these two factors to get the product here, 30 times the 2, which is 60. And then we came down to the ones, and we multiplied the ones times the tens place up here. 5 times 20, we got 100. And then we did 5 times the ones place times the other ones place, and we got 10. So once we've done all that, we then had to add up all those partial products to get our final answer. So we knew that our answer would be 600 plus 100 is 700, and 60 plus 10 is 70, so that was going to equal 770. So we use this model to multiply to find our product. And that way we multiplied our 10 times our tens place, and then our 10 times our ones place, and then we took this 10 and we times it by the tens place, and then this one times it by the other one. So we got all our multiplications in there. Well, we're using that same sort of model with our mixed numbers. Now let's take that example we used before. If I have 3 times 1 and 1/2, how would that model work for this? I'm going to draw my rectangle, and I'm going to expand my 1 and 1/2 into the 1 whole plus the 1/2 over here. And then I'm going to write my whole number here. Now I'm ready to multiply my 3 times the 1, and then I have to multiply the 3 times the 1/2. So I'm really using distributive property there so that I multiply all those parts. All right, so 3 times the 1/2. I'm going to put a 1 under my 3. That's going to equal 3 times 1 is 3, and 1 times 2 is 2, which is an improper fraction, and that equals 3 divided by 2, which is 1 and 1/2. So I know it's 1 and 1/2 for my answer here, and 3 for here. And like in the other example, I add those two together, and I get 3 plus 1 is 4 and a half. So I know that 3 times 1 and 1/2 is equal to 4 and 1/2. So we're going to take a couple of problems and we're going to work through those. So the first one we're going to do is this problem that says determine the area of a rug that is 8 3/4 feet long and 3 feet wide. I know when I find area, that's a multiplication problem. 8 3/4 times 3 would give me the area of this rug. So I'm going to use my rectangular model. I'm going to expand my 8 3/4. Now I'll put my whole number here on the width. And I'm going to say 3 times the 8 is 24. And then I'm going to say 3 times the 3/4. 3 times 3 is 9. I have to go outside here a little bit to work it. And 1 times 4 is 4. 9/4 is improper. So I'm going to have to divide. I know 4 goes into 9 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. I subtract out that 8. I have 1 left over. And then I take that 1 and I'm going to rewrite it as a fraction remainder. So I know that this part is equal to 2 and 1/4. Now I add these two partial products. And I'm going to get 26 and 1/4. So the answer to that question is 26 and 1/4. Okay, we're going to take another example. And this question asks, a piece of tile measures 2 1/2 inches wide and 3 inches long. Determine the area of the tile. Well, I know when I find area, I'm going to multiply the length times the width. So if I'm multiplying the length times the width, I'm going to be multiplying a mixed number times a whole number. And I know that I just can't say, oh, 2 times 3 and write 6 and then a half. I can't just write that for my answer. I have to multiply both the 3 times the 2, then the 3 times the 1/2, and then combine those two partial products to get my answer. And I can do that very easily with this area model. Draw the rectangle. I'm going to expand my 2 1/2 at the top. I'm going to write my 3 on the width. And now I'm going to multiply by each of those parts of that mixed number. 3 times 2 is 6. And then 3 times 1/2 equals 3 over 2, and that's improper. And I know that is equal to 1 and 1/2. So this part is equal to 1 and 1/2. 3 times 2 is 6, and 3 times 1/2 is equal to 1 and 1/2. So I'm going to add those two partial products together to get my total. So I know my answer is 7 and 1/2 for that multiplication. In our next problem, we're going to determine the area of the rectangle that's shown. Now I can see that this rectangle has a length of 3 1/2 units, and it's shown by 3 whole units and a half of another one, and a width of 3 whole units. So I have the multiplication problem, 3 and 1/2 times 3. So I'm going to draw a model to show this. I'm going to write my width, and then I'm going to expand my 3 1/2 at the top. I'm going to multiply here in the first step. 3 times 3 is 6, and then 3 times 1/2. It seems like we just did this. Is equal to 3 over 2, which is equal to 1 and 1/2. And this just happens to be the same problem, doesn't it? Different card, same answer. All right, so let's try one more and step it out before you're going to try some of these on your own. All right, well, this one is one that has two mixed numbers multiplied by each other. 6 1/3 times 3 1/2. I'm going to use that model to help me figure this out in the same way. And I'm going to expand my 6 1/3 along my length here. And my 3 1/2. Notice I split that up too. Then I'm going to multiply my 3 times my 6 and get 18. And then here I need to multiply my 3 times my 1/3. And the 3 times 1 is 3 over 3, and that's going to end up equaling 1. Let me circle that so I don't lose my answer there. It's 1. Then we have 1/2 times 6. That's going to equal 6 over 2. And I know that's improper, so I simplify it by saying 6 divided by 2 is equal to 3. And then my last step, I'm going to multiply my fraction times my fraction. 1 times 1 is 1, and 2 times 3 is 6, and that does not simplify. All right, now my last step is to add up all my partial products. I'm going to add the 3 times 6, 18, that goes here. And then this, the 3 times the 1/3 ended up to be 1. The 1/2 times the 6 turned out to be 3. And then the 1/2 times the 1/3 was 1/6. See, that's going to be 18 plus 1 is 19. Plus 3 more, 22. And 1/6. Alright, so I know that 6 1/3 times 3 1/2 equals 22 and 1/6. Okay, boys and girls, you're going to have 5 questions in Google Slides that you're going to go to, and you're going to work out similar problems. And you have a set of instructions on how to operate that Google Slide to type your answer into the box. Okay, so good luck on that, and bring your questions to the next class. Bye-bye.